Hi VC, Dark Dove coming back at you again. It's Monday the 16th. Um, a lot of stuff to show. Some record fair finds and also a lot of charity and thrift shop pickups as well. So I get into things straight away with I was at a record fair the weekend before last. So just picked up four items, but four very nice finds. I think you'll agree. I started off with I spotted this. This is by a band who I found out about them pretty through the VC, primarily on a Facebook group called Vinyl Champions. Um, the band called Cyanamide. Sorry, Simon. This is again pronunciation. Cymande. Anyway, um, this album is called Promised Heights. Now, Cymande, they were a UK-based group comprised of members hailing from both Africa and the West Indies. They made a few albums in the early half of the 70s. This, I think, is their third or fourth album, and this came out in 1974. It's first time. I'm pretty sure it's the first time I've ever come across one of their albums in the wild. And now I bought this from a guy. I bought things from him before. He's a guy from the UK. He lives in Ireland. Lives in Dublin. Comes down to the fairs now and again. Very nice guy. I've bought some stuff off him for very nice prices. He's selling off his personal collection basically. But this okay. So musically, very interesting mixture. They kind of mixed African Caribbean styles with American style funk, a bit of reggae. Um, this, by the way, this came out on this came out on Contempo 1974, which I think might have been connected with Pi Records. Not 100% sure. Um, so yeah, so this is so this is his own personal copy of this, and there is a very interesting story behind this because he got actually back in the day he got this signed by the band, um, as you can see there. He said he got it signed when they played the Brixton Academy back in the more or less around the time this album came out, and he has some coming with the album. It's on the sleeve or some contemporary. Actually, there's half of that missing. Some contemporary magazine cuttings and articles about the band. I'll just find the other one. Sorry, there is another one. So it's actually kind of in two halves, but that is an article about Cymande. Sorry, I know I'm mispronouncing the band name, but another magazine cutout, which he kept, which is I don't think that's not actually them, but it's very nice. I picked it up for a pretty nice price as well, considering the fact that it's signed by the band and has these contemporary magazine cutouts. Out of all the items I'm going to show you, it cost me the most. It cost me 17 euros, which is pretty nice enough price actually for this album, considering what it generally goes for. Because looking it up online, it seems to rarely go for less than for less than 20 euros. But it's an excellent mixture of styles of funk, funk rock, Afro, kind of African influence. Yeah, very very pleased to find it, because I only really became aware of this band through Facebook and particularly through the Vinyl Champions page. But so pleased to pick that up and add that to my collection. Next up, a band whom I don't have quite enough of their stuff on vinyl. That is the Velvet Underground, and I got this from another seller. So this is VU, which it came out a retrospective release from 1985, and this comprises of what was then previously unreleased recordings by the Velvet Underground. So you basically get a lot of these songs went on to be recycled by Lou Reed for in Transformer. Stephanie says, yeah. So Can't Stand It. Can't Stand It. The opening track is a fantastic version of that. And this was this cost me like €6 or €7, so got it for a pretty nice price. And I don't have a whole lot of Velvet Underground on vinyl, but this kind of ties in with a bit of a story I'm going to tell you in a minute, regarding some of my other finds and what I lost out on. So I'll be getting to that in a minute. From the same seller, I picked up this. Now this is the soundtrack to a movie which I remember seeing years ago, maybe about 20 years ago. It's called The Burning, and it's by a soundtrack by Rick Wakeman. Rick Wakeman, yes, I don't need to tell you that. This movie was a kind of slasher movie from the early 80s. A very silly movie, but fun. And it's got a great soundtrack. I remember seeing it over 20 years ago, and I just loved that that soundtrack, by a synthesizer soundtrack by Rick Wakeman. And I spotted this at the fair and just grabbed it. It was fairly cheap. It was about €6, I think. And yeah, it's like a pretty gory movie from what I remember. But it's a kind of, like Friday the 13th rip-off. But anyway, a great soundtrack. So it came out on Phonogram, 1981. Now, from the same seller. Now, this one was a real surprise. I actually found this in that seller's bargain bin, which I wasn't even going to look at, but I was almost on the point of leaving. This seller had a box with everything marked €5, fiver. €5 is kind of maybe slightly less than $5 US dollars maybe. And I was flicking through it, mostly kind of stuff that's not very exciting stuff, but immediately saw this, and I thought, well, this has to be a mistake. And music from the Penguin Cafe, by Penguin Cafe Orchestra. Now, many of you might be familiar with Brian Eno's Obscure label, which he set up in 1975. This is on that label. This is an original. This came out in 1976, so it's an original release on Brian Eno's Obscure label. Now, pretty much all the releases, I think, pretty much they all had the same sleeve, a kind of black sleeve with there's like a kind of faint, make out the kind of faint outline of a building, of a skyscraper. But this is the original pressing, and this is pretty rare. This was reissued in the 80s with a totally different cover, and it's a cover of I think the cover was like a blue cover with a picture of a guy with a man with a penguin's head. But this is the original on Obscure, and this is pretty rare. And I found it in the bargain bin, and I thought, what's it doing in there? Like, you know, and didn't say anything. The guy just picked it up and paid for it. And okay, so Simon Jeffs, Penguin Cafe Orchestra were set up by Simon Jeffs, the late Simon Jeffs, who died in the late 90s. This is kind of very hard to categorize, but those of you who are familiar with Penguin Cafe Orchestra will know it's very kind of experimental, in a kind of a quirky way. They released a whole series of albums throughout the 80s, but this is the first one, and this is, as I said, pretty rare original pressing. And actually, this label, generally the Obscure, Enos Obscure label is generally very hard to find in the wild. This is the only thing that I have now on it, because it's not something you generally come across in the wild too often. But I think that the seller mustn't have been familiar with what this is. He's a bit of an older gentleman, because certainly to grab it for a fiver was for somebody who would be familiar with it and with the Obscure label, they definitely wouldn't be giving it away for that. But very, very glad to have grabbed that and to have it in my collection. Okay, moving on. I'm going to move on now to thrift and charity shop finds. I found this in a junk shop. Now this is by a short-lived group called Random Hold, active in the late 70s. Comprised members of Matching Mole and Quiet Sun. Guitarist Bill McCormack was in Matching Mole. It was produced by Peter Hamill of Van der Graaf Generator. This cost me €2. The sleeve is pretty manky and a slight smell off it, but the disc itself is perfect. Absolutely clean as a whistle. Again, this is quite interesting. It's kind of post-punk, art punk meets kind of Canterbury sound. So, by the way, it's a 12-inch. It's an EP. But yeah, so Random Hold, and it's self-titled EP. Well worth tracking down. I don't think it's not particularly rare. It doesn't go for that much, but quite glad to find this, because it's an excellent slice of kind of reminiscent of what Robert Fripp was doing in the late 70s, early 80s. Where kind of prog net post-punk kind of thing. So nice pickup. Now, some charity shop finds. I ventured a bit further afield out of the city to a small town, some 20 miles away, just for a bit of a day trip and to check out the charity shops there. Did my round of the charity shops. Didn't find much of interest until I went to one in particular, where they had I had a stack of vinyl records were €3 each, and immediately found this Moods of Marvin Gaye, an original UK copy from 1966, mono. So this is on Tamala Motown. I have to get a new bag as well. Now, side 1 isn't too bad condition-wise. It's a kind of acceptable condition, but side 2, I don't know if you can see that big long scratch there. There is a quite noticeable scratch on side 2 running the entire length of the record. No, there is a click, there is a pretty noticeable click, but you know, it plays. So I got this for €3. Even considering that's the scratch, that's pretty pleased with that, because this is, you know, this is a rarity. This is not something that you'd come across every day. Generally goes for quite a lot in decent condition, like. So it's a fairly early Marvin Gaye record. Side 1 is kind of more that typical Motown soul thing, and side 2 is kind of jazzier, but Ain't That Peculiar on side 1. That's probably the best known track on it. Yeah, it's pretty pleased with that, you know, even, you know, considering the slight condition issue with it. Now the other thing that I picked up at the same charity shop, immediately drawn to the cover, really interesting, nice cover design there, and then of course noticed some of the names on there. A lot of familiar names: Quincy Jones, Dizzy Gillespie, Art Blakey, Oscar Peterson, Milt Jackson, and Chet Baker. So this is called, it's got this kind of strange title, We Had a Ball. It's basically, I think it was originally some kind of a musical, stage Broadway musical, but this is a jazz interpretation by these various artists. McCoy Tyner is on here as well. Yeah, so it's partially kind of a big band kind of a thing on some tracks, but I mean, you know, there's a lot of good instrumental kind of stuff on here as well. Again, had to get a new bag. The original bag on this was literally rotten. I mean, it was just rotten. Like, but the vinyl cleaned up pretty nicely. This is from 1965. This wasn't on Discog, so I'm actually after adding it myself. Well, actually, this particular pressing wasn't on there, so the UK pressing on Mercury. So yeah, so it's actually in really nice condition. So yeah, so I got the two of them, that and the Marvin Gaye for €3 each. So pretty pleased with those two finds. Okay, moving on to more charity shop finds. There's a charity shop here in town, a cancer shop. There's actually two cancer charity shops here in town. This particular one, very, very rarely do I find anything in it. It's once in a blue moon you might find any vinyl, but I walked in there and there's a big box of vinyl. There was a woman who works in there taking a big armful of it out and walking to the back storeroom. And what was she doing? I had a look through what was left, and these three discoveries. Now these are all €1 each. Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five raised messages. This is a compilation from 1984. So all his best, pretty good stuff on there. Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. Johnny Johnson and the Bandwagon, 1968, on the Direction label. Johnny Johnson and the Bandwagon, they're an American group, kind of an example of what would be in Britain known as Northern Soul. So Breaking Down the Walls of Heartache is one of the songs on this, which would go on to be covered by Dexy's Midnight Runners. So another nice find. And thirdly, excuse me, this, which had never seen this before, but I thought it looked extremely interesting. Bands That Could Be God, the Conflict compilation. Pretty interesting cover there. I'd never heard of any of these groups, but certainly decided this is something worth grabbing for €1. It turns out it's a hardcore punk compilation on a label called Conflict, recorded in 1983-84 in Boston. I think these mostly groups from the Boston area, possibly. I'll show you the label. Now, it turns out this is pretty rare. This goes for, well, it goes for, between 20 to 30 euros maybe. It's missing an insert. There was an insert with it apparently, but it's missing that. So have a listen to this. There's pretty interesting stuff on this. Most of these bands seem to have only, just by looking it up on Discogs, most of the bands on this seem to have not existed beyond this compilation or recorded anything else. They just seem to record one song and then disappear. It's a very interesting find. Now, there's a bit of a story here, and it kind of ties in with the Velvet Underground thing earlier. I spotted a Facebook post. There's a Facebook page here called Irish Vinyl Enthusiasts, and a guy, made a post on this site and said, "Look what I found in the cancer shop." I knew from it was the same place from his description last Monday, which, well, it was the same. It was on a Monday a couple of weeks ago, and it was the same Monday that I had walked in. He showed Velvet Underground Loaded, Kraftwerk Computer World. I think it was the debut album by Husker Du, debut album by the Long Riders, and there was something else as well, which I can't remember. And I thought, frig it, I missed out on just by an hour. He'd been in there like an hour before me. I was corresponding with him, and I said to him, I was in there myself a bit later, and he said that at the same time as he was in there, somebody else just before him grabbed another load of stuff. This other guy went off with according to the guy on Facebook, he said this other person went off with a load of Bob Dylan, a load of Neil Young, and Television Marquee Moon, among other stuff. According to him, there was like something like 70 records there to begin with. So I got these three on the day. I don't know why these were left behind, but they were. I did call back a few days later, and oh, by the way, sorry, there was a few 7-inch singles as well. Yeah, I'll show them. Just these are 50 cent each. Scare Me to Death by Mark Bolan, on Cherry, released on Cherry Red in 1981. And two Soft Cell singles. They're they're not rare, so I won't dwell on them. But I went back a few days later, and they put out some more stuff which apparently had been in the storeroom, which they'd forgotten about, and made one final grab. Bob Marley and the Wailers, Kaya. So yeah, so grab this for €1. I missed out a lot of stuff, but I did make it four. Well, yeah, and four nice finds of LPs. So very nice copy. It came out in 1978, I think. Not sure if it's an original pressing, probably an 80s reissue, but still, it's really nice album. And €1, you can't go wrong. But I'm kicking myself over what I missed out on, because Kraftwerk Computer World and Loaded by the Velvet Underground, they're like two albums which are big on my want list. So okay, I actually have a load more stuff to show, but I'm actually going to leave it at that, because I might actually shoot two separate videos, because I have another big bunch of stuff to show as well. So I'll do a follow-up video, but for now I'll leave it at that. So thanks very much for watching, everybody.